Yo guys, what is up? Max here on Borderlands 3 video, and today we are finally doing it. We are ranking every single legendary weapon in Borderlands 3. Today we're going to be ranking them in our customized tier list, starting at our S tier, Fill Swift damage. Then we got that's a lot of damage, good damage, that's some damage, that's okay damage, delete this, zero damage involved, and our utility slash can't be ranked category. Based on feedback from our last tier list, we've added some tiers and added the utility slash can't be ranked tier. So I hope you guys are happy with that. Probably split this into like 2 videos because I feel like this is going to be really long, but hopefully this will be a resource that you guys can use to rank or understand what weapons are good and what weapons you don't need to have in your vault. And with updates and level cap increases, I plan to try to keep this updated to the best of my ability. With that, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, be sure to drop a like, comment, and subscribe. And with that, guys, let's get right into it. So starting out the tier list, we've got a lot of things to talk about. Let's just start it. Our first weapon is the Torg Alchemist. It's an okay assault rifle. I'm going to put it in that's okay damage. I've never been too impressed with this thing. It is kind of cool that it does some self-damage, but it's also kind of a drawback. Originally, when this game first came out, people used it with the Transformer. I just think that's kind of a boring playstyle now. So I'm going to put it in that's okay damage. Next up, we have the Barrage. Barrage, solid assault rifle. It's a dull assault rifle. I feel like it doesn't do as well as its brother, the Chaos, another good dull assault rifle, and the Breath of the Dying over there. So seeing as where I'm going to rank those things, I'm also going to put that in the that's okay damage category. All right, next up we got the Bearcat. Bearcat, oh, it's just, I've tried using this thing. I've done a takedown with it. It was terrible. As much as I've tried to like this weapon, I just can't. I'm going to put this in delete this, zero damage involved. Just really not worth your time. Becca, I really enjoy using this weapon. To be honest, I haven't used it a lot, and the fact that it's a mission reward and pretty hard to acquire, I can't rate this thing too high up there, but the times that I have used it, I've really enjoyed it. So I'm going to put the Becca in that some damage. Next up, we have the Breath of the Dying. I love the Breath of the Dying. It's a really entertaining weapon to use. It works well in multiplayer, works well in killing tons of ads and killing bosses. Its biggest downside is that the Breath of the Dying is a pretty easy way to kill yourself. So I'm going to put the Breath of the Dying with the Becca. It's a good weapon, but it has a decent amount of downsides as well. And the fact that it's corrosive lock definitely hurts the weapon. Next up, we have the Carrier. Used to be my favorite assault rifle in the game. With the nerf to extra projectiles, this thing was hurt tremendously, and it's pretty poor right now. I'm gonna put it in that's okay damage. Next up, we have the Clairvoyance. The Clairvoyance is a strong assault rifle. It really always has been. It's not the most powerful weapon in the game, but on certain builds, it is really, really strong. I'm gonna be putting it with. It realistically could go between a lot of damage and good damage. I'm going to put it in good damage just because there's a lot of different variants of this weapon, and some of them perform differently, and overall, I would say it's a good damage. All right, next up, we have the Contained Blast. Solid assault rifle. Based on where I'm placing these two things, I'd probably put it between the Clairvoyance or the Breath of the Dying. I think I have to put it with the Breath of the Dying and the Becca. I think that's a solid place for it. Next up, we have the Damned. I don't like this weapon. I really don't. It's not zero damage, but I'm going to put it in that's okay damage. I've heard people enjoy it. I know it got buffed, but I personally just don't really like this weapon. Next up, we got the Dowsing Rod. Dowsing Rod, you can do cool things with its grenade launcher, especially if you're rocking Moze, but it's pretty niche scenario, and overall, I didn't have a great experience with this weapon. And I haven't enjoyed it too much, don't see it used that much, so I'm going to put it in okay damage. Next up, we got the Phaser. Phaser's a tough one because it's got 2 firing modes, and its second firing mode is much stronger. I do think it's better than the that's okay damage, but definitely nothing too great to write home about, so we're going to be putting it in that's some damage category. I know people do like this weapon, and I've been asked to use it more, so this is probably going to upset some of you, but I not a huge fan. Next up, this is the Embrace the Pain, Pain's Power. If a weapon I don't recognize immediately, I'm just going to put it down here, and we'll come back to it because none of these weapons have labels on them. And just to get through this, we're just going to keep moving. That is the Gatling gun. Not a fan. Not a fan. We're going to put that in That's Okay Damage. Next up, we have the Good Juju. This weapon's cool. It has a really unique mechanic in it to increase the crit damage or headshot damage when you're using it by hitting body shots. It's good, not the greatest thing. I'm going to be putting it in That's Some Damage. I do think this weapon could be used more and used very well on some niche builds, but nothing too great. This is the Hand of Glory. I'm going to be honest, this is a quest reward. I got it. I never really used it. I can't really place this thing. It doesn't come with anointment, and I don't think you're going to get any use of this. So it's either you can't be ranked because I never really used it, or just delete the 0 damage, but I'm pretty sure it's very average. Ooh, next up, we have the Dazzle. Dazzle is honestly a personal favorite of mine. I loved this thing when I first was working on Fire Hose Moze. This is the weapon that I gravitated towards due to its ricochets, its splash damage, freezing, and just its reload mechanic worked really well with Moze and a Blastmaster. I think a lot more people should be using this thing, and I'm going to be putting it in Good Damage. Its biggest flaw, honestly, in my opinion, is that it is non-elemental or cryo-locked. If it could come in all elements, this thing would be absolutely amazing. Next up, the Chaos. I actually, this thing is so good. It's a dull assault rifle, so you wouldn't think it's that great, but its explosion on kill and its rate of fire and DPS output that it can put across on pretty much all builds is really, really strong. I think this is going to be our first weapon that I actually put in the allotted damage category. I really, really have been enjoying this thing on all builds. Next up, we have the Laser Sploder. Laser Sploder, recently buffed. It's a lot stronger than it used to be, and I think it's a little bit better than these two weapons in Good Damage, so I'm going to put it in a lot of damage. I'm not sure if it's super deserving of that, but I've heard good things. You know what? I'm going to put it, I take it back. I'm going to put it in Good Damage, just because my personal experience hasn't been that great with it, but I have heard people really liking it. Next up, the Lead Sprinkler. Niche weapon with increased area of effect damage. This thing's pretty good. Without it, it's honestly pretty terrible. I'm going to be putting it in That's Some Damage. You can make this thing work, but with a certain spec and only with certain roles does this thing truly shine, and for that reason, I'll be moving on. Lucian's Call, solid damage. Used to be one of the best weapons in the game when the game first launched. We're going to place that in, I think That's Some Damage. I think that's a fair spot for it. It's not great, but its mechanic and the way the gun works well. It's only really good right now on Zane, and that doesn't say much because Zane's OP. The Mutant, delete this weapon. Don't use it. It's really bad. You don't need to even think about this. Most people probably haven't even seen this weapon. Next up, I believe this is the Sawbar. Got buffed. It works, but it is such a pain in the butt to even get this weapon to do damage and to, like, distance yourself enough. Oh, a big told it's the No Pew Pew. If that's the No Pew Pew, we're going to put it in Good Damage because that weapon is awesome. It looked like the Sawbar, all right? Leave me alone. Next up, we got the OPQ. Even at level 57, and it's weird ranking this thing because it's level 57, we're now 65, and you cannot get a level 65 variant of this when cartels come back and we can get this thing. It is a personal one of my favorite guns in the entire game and one of the most powerful. This thing still performs better than, I would say, 80% of weapons in Borderlands, even at level 57. I think it's going to be our first Phil Swift. That's a lot of damage category. This thing is just gross and is one of the main reasons people love the Cartel event. It's just such an awesome weapon. Next up, we have the Ogre. Ogre got buffed fairly recently. It's still pretty mediocre, in my opinion. I could place this in That's Some Damage, but I feel like I've been burned by this weapon so many times. I'm going to be putting it in That's Okay Damage. not worth using in my opinion. I've tried it. I want to like it because it was one of my favorites in Borderlands 2, but I don't. This is the Rebel Yell. I'm also going to come back to this one. I would put this and delete this 0 damage, but it got buffed, and I genuinely haven't used the buff yet. So when I get around to it, I can place this, but typically delete this 0 damage. Next up, we have the Rowan's Call. Rowan's Call I like. I'm going to put it at the same call as the Lucians. Rowan's is slightly better than the Lucians in my opinion, but I don't think it's as good as these weapons up here. So that's where I'm going to place it. That's got to be the saw bar. If that isn't the saw bar, then I don't know. Saw bar, I don't like. I really don't. It's better damage than delete this 0 damage, but we're going to put it in that's okay. You can melt bosses with this thing. It's just not worth even equipping. Another COV assault rifle. I'm sorry, guys. I don't like it. Star Helix. I love the Star Helix. One of the first legendaries I ever got in Borderlands 3. I have enjoyed it since I used it, and it's only gotten stronger since the game has gone on. I'm going to be putting it in that's good damage. Next up, the Shred of Fire. Shred of Fire got buffed. It's pretty strong. I'm going to put the Shred of Fire with the good damage weapons. It used to be just a ammo consumption weapon. It's not anymore. It is quite strong, and if you haven't used it in a while, I'd recommend checking it out, especially since we just got new Terra gear. Terra gear makes this thing even more usable with the ammo regen. Next up, we have the Boom Sickle. This thing is also hard to rate because the Boom Sickle is incredible, but the normal sickle is terrible. So I'm just going to say that this is the Boom Sickle, and we're just going to pretend it's the Boom Sickle and only the Boom Sickle because that's the only variant that is worth using. And the Boom Sickle I would put in that's a lot of damage. It's very strong. It's always been strong, but very difficult to acquire. Next up, we have the Soul Render. I love this weapon. I don't think it's quite as good as these just because I've been a little overwhelmed by it recently, but I'm going to put it in good damage. I think that's a fair spot for it. I know it's a personal favorite for a lot of people just because it's so cool, but realistically, I think it's slightly below these two. It is the Storos Bird. Yeah, it is the Storos Bird. I don't like this thing. I just don't like it. I'm going to put it in okay damage. We're moving on. On to the next one. Stone Thrower. Cool assault rifle. Not too great. I'm going to put it in okay damage as well. It's just a little mediocre. Next up, we have the Dictator. This thing used to be one of the best weapons in the game, and then the Monarch came along. Look how much better the Monarch looks right next to it. It's still a good weapon. I just don't know why you would ever use it over the Monarch, and for that reason, we're going to be putting it in okay damage. Realistically, we could probably put it in that sub damage. It's just been forgotten about. There's really no point. We have the Monarch. I think we all know where this thing is going. It is arguably the strongest weapon in Borderlands 3. Its rate of fire, its DPS output is insane. Its boss melting potential, its mobbing potential, everything about it is good. The biggest draw to this thing is that you're slow when you use it, and to counteract that, we have like the light show, but it's OP. There's no way to go around it besides saying that the Monarch is OP. Next up, we have the Tribolt. That's a horrible weapon. Screw this weapon. We have the Warlord next. Warlord, cool weapon. It feels good to use. It's just not ever been like a great performing weapon, but it is fun to use. It feels good to use. It's a dull AR. Most dull weapons do feel good to use. I'm gonna be putting it in. I think it underperforms a little bit compared to these other weapons, so we're gonna go with that's okay damage. Next up, we have the Web Slinger. I would put this thing in utility because technically you can use it for jumping, but Gearbox came out and said that was not the intention of the weapon. It was actually not intended for jumping, and because its intended use isn't for utility, And it just pisses me off every time I get this weapon because it is from the hardest activity in the game. Delete it. It's just so frustrating. You can hold on to one for when you do want to do some jumps, but man, this gun aggravates me. It really, really aggravates me. Next up, we have the Eruption. This is a utility weapon. It is one of the best utility weapons in the game, providing you with a crazy debuff when you reload it. It sends out missiles, it debuffs enemies, and if you're ever wanting to use something that's a little underpowered, debuff an enemy with the Eruption, and you will pretty much one-shot them with anything else. Next up, we have the Backburner. The Backburner is top 3 rocket launchers in the game, easily. It's extremely strong. It is absolutely Phil Swift levels of damage. Definitely recommend getting yourself a Backburner. It's good in almost all situations. Next up, we have the Creamer. Moxie weapons in this game are nowhere near as strong as they were in Borderlands 2. I think after the prevalence of Moxie weapons in Borderlands 2, they got severely nerfed in Borderlands 3. The Creamer is right along with that. It is a delete this, 0 damage. It's just not really worth using, even for healing. Like, you can use it for the healing, but there's so many other better ways to heal than just shooting a rocket launcher. The gun, best weapon in the game. We're gonna put that in utility because, like, I don't even think you can delete it if you wanted to. So, next up is the Freeman. It's a super cool weapon. I know people have done some cool damage things with it, but for me, it's okay. It's just okay. Globetrotter's solid. It's just, once again, it's kind of like just a disappointing weapon to get because of the amount of time that you had to invest just to get it. It's realistically solid. I've one-shot Trant with it. Any weapon that could do that is pretty okay in my books, but overall pretty meh. Pretty meh. We have the Hive next. Gonna be honest with you guys, I haven't used the Hive in a real long time. I know people like it. I think it's gonna go in some damage as well. There's cool things you can do with it, but yeah, not too big on it. The Ion Cannon, we have to put in. I mean, if I don't put this in Phil Swift damage, like, how do I justify putting anything else in here? One of the, I think, strongest weapon in the game, off of just pure base number damage. It got a pretty severe nerf, but as a one-shot weapon to some of the healthiest bosses in the game, or as a second win weapon, you really just can't go wrong with this thing. Still absolutely dominant, and with the introduction of 390, this thing only got even stronger. Definitely recommend getting an Ion Cannon if you haven't had one. Next one, the Jericho. Jericho is S tier for me, personally, because I murdered K6 with it. But in general, it's pretty bad. I wouldn't delete this because you can hold on to it to kill your friends with, but I would put it in that's okay damage. It is the only PvP weapon you could get in Arms Race, so pretty cool. Next up, we got the Major Con. I actually like this thing. It's really hard to use, but if you are using it properly, it performs really well, both on Amara and Zane. I had a lot of fun with this. I know it does some cool things on Moze as well, but didn't try it on Moze. I'm going to be putting it in that's some damage just because it has the potential to be up in a lot of damage. It absolutely can do the damage to be in good damage, but just because it's so awkward, I'm going to put it there. Next up, we have the Mongol. That's an okay damage weapon. I'll put that with the Jericho. It's just not impressive to me. Next up, the Nukem. I like the Nukem. I've seen some silly things that people do with the Nukem on Zane. Seen some silly things that people do with the Nukem on Flak. It gets indiscriminate on Amara. We'll put it in good damage. You need to. It only works if you're really utilizing overkill. And for that reason, I'm going to take it out of a lot of damage because these don't weapons you could just use. The Nukem, you need overkill to really make it shine. Next up, Plague Bear. Personal favorite weapon of mine. Insane for mobbing, insane for bossing. One of the hardest weapons to get with the correct roll, but literally any character you strap this thing onto will dominate. The plumage. Oh, F this weapon. I hate this thing. This thing is terrible. Terrible. I would never recommend using this. Next up, the Quatomizer. It's okay. It's okay. Next up, the Ruby's Rash. This thing will pop up when you never want it to. Don't like this weapon. Delete this, 0 damage. Next up, we have the Satisfaction. Probably the least satisfying weapon to use in this game. I don't know what's wrong with it. Like, I genuinely don't understand. Like, the damage numbers look high. It's a strong-looking rocket launcher. It's Torg. It's got stickies, if I'm not mistaken. And you shoot this thing, and it just doesn't kill anything. So, I'm going to delete this, 0 damage. It probably could be put in that's okay damage, but its rate of fire is so slow. Next up, we got the Scourge. Kind of like the Dictator, just gets overshadowed by the Plague Bear, but this thing on its own is still very solid. I'm going to be putting it in good damage because I would say it rivals the Nukem in still being able to use well, and definitely a good weapon. Next up, we have the Tunguska. I don't like it. I'm sorry. It's bad. Delete this, 0 damage. No thank you. The Yellow Cake. Yellow Cake got nerfed. People were upset about it. I still think it's one of the strongest weapons in the game. If we put the OPQ in the lot, I think we have to put the Yellow Cake up at the top. It's where this thing deserves to be. We could put in a lot of damage, but it's still pretty ridiculous. Still one of the best things you could use. Shocking AAA. I like this weapon, but it consumes a lot of ammo. You reload so much, and the DPS output's pretty mediocre. I'm gonna put it in. We'll put it in some damage. I think that's an okay spot for it. Next up, we have the Amazing Grace Pistol. I can't really rank this thing because I haven't used it very much. It's a quest reward. I don't think this thing can come anointed. And judging what chat says, they say it's trash. So let's put it in trash. Feels good. This is a birthday present for a little girl, but let's put it in the trash. Next up, we got the Baby Maker. Baby Maker. Strong, but uses up so much ammo. I've gotten this thing a few times in Arms Race. I'm going to put it in that's okay damage. It's good, but wow, does it chew through ammo. Next up, we have the Bangarang. Oh boy. A lot of people really love this weapon. As a weapon that you equip on a player or a character without a build, it's solid. When you get this thing going on a correct setup, it's insane. I wouldn't put it at the Phil Swift levels of damage because these guns here require literally nothing to overperform. This thing does need a little bit of sauce attached to it to perform, but when it does, it is amazing. I'm going to be putting it in a lot of damage. Don't cancel me. Thank you very much. Next up, we have the Beacon. I love the Beacon. I'm going to put the Beacon. It's not overpowered, but it is incredibly strong. We're going to be putting the Beacon in a lot of damage. Next up, we have the Bloom. Bloom's alright. Really cool weapon. It's just not too great, but it definitely isn't bad. I'm putting it in good damage. I think it's a solid choice. Next up, we're about to get into the Torg pistols. Now, Torg pistols are one and the same. Between the Breeder and the Devil's Foursome, the Echo, and the Devastator, I think I can basically just take this lump sum and put them all into okay. We're just gonna move. That's the Craps, though. Craps is good. The Craps is good. I like this weapon. I like it a lot. I'll put the Craps in good damage. That is the Devastator. That's okay. This is the Devil's Foursome. That's okay. This is the Echo. It's okay. That is the Frozen Devil. That's okay damage. Oh, the Gargoyle. Ooh, I really like this thing. It is elemental locked. Definitely holds it back. I think you could put this thing realistically in Phil Swift levels of damage. But due to its elemental lock to corrosive, I'm going to be putting it in a lot of damage. Definitely one of the best pistols in the game. All right, we got the Girth Blaster Elite. This thing's a meme. It's supposed to be a meme. I'm probably gonna delete this. All right. That is it for the video. I don't know if this is gonna be 3 videos, 2 videos. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something new. I will have the image for this to download if you guys want to have it up while you're playing, if you're new and want to know what to keep an eye out for, what to delete. Also, the link will be there if you guys want to make your own tier list. If you guys want to make a tier list and send it to me on Twitter, definitely be taking a look at those. Guys, it's been an absolute blast. I will catch y'all in the next one. Take care. Peace.